What's going on, everyone who's excited for Honkai Star Rail? My name is Braxophone. I've played in the last couple betas for the game, and I wanted to bring you guys a little bit of an early tier list based on my experience with the game and the characters in it. And that way we can kind of talk about what characters might be worth rerolling for and what characters you should invest in early on if you want to get the most value out of your account. Keep in mind, this is all extremely early info, so it's possible that a lot of this could end up being wrong in the long run or in the end game content if you get to the very end and everyone's maxed out and stuff, because betas are limited and you don't have unlimited time. But with that said, I'm super excited to talk to you guys about which characters are going to be good. You're going to be very satisfied with how free-to-play friendly the game is, at least at the launch of the game. We'll see what happens later on, but a lot of the starting characters are very good. So first things first, let's just talk about some of the characters and where they're going to belong. Right off the bat, I'm going to take Danhong. He's one of the first characters that you get, and I'm going to put him in the B tier. The reason I'm going to put him in B tier is because he's pretty all right at what he does. He's a damage dealer. He's good at single target. He's good for bosses and things, and he's Wind. Wind could use a couple more characters. So I put Danhong in B tier. B is not a bad tier to be in. It's just not A or S tier, and it's definitely not C or F tier. Keeping on with the rankings of the starting characters, we have March 7th. March 7th is a character that's going to be able to provide you shield and has a guaranteed freeze mechanic that can be very strong, especially if you need to just take a turn to heal up, or if enemies are about to charge up an attack and absolutely obliterate you. That freeze is going to save you a lot of the time, whether it's just the extra turn that you need or just to cancel out certain attacks. Freeze is absolutely fantastic, and I'm actually going to put March up in A tier only because I think that there are characters more deserving of S tier, but March is definitely borderline S tier character. Absolutely insane unit, especially for free to play. Asta is a character that can buff your team's attack speed, and speed is actually a very powerful stat in turn-based games. It's going to allow you, if you do it right, if you have the right stats in your characters, to get multiple attacks in per cycle, and more attacks could mean more skill points depending on the team, or it could just mean more break, shred, more ultimate opportunities. Attack speed is very valuable. I'm not going to put her in S tier because I don't feel like at the moment she's strong enough to be completely meta defining, but she is a very powerful unit. I'm going to put her up in A tier. I'm actually going to rank the Trailblazer last because there's two variants of them, but there's only one icon here, and we'll talk about that very last. Another free character we get is Natasha. Now, Natasha is actually kind of insane. So she has an AoE heal on her ultimate, and her ult just does not cost a lot to actually use. So you'll be able to use it really frequently for that AoE heal. And if you don't need to personal heal anyone, she is going to be able to fizz break for you, which is all right. She's also a really great healer. I also want to add that she removes debuffs, as you can see here on screen. She can remove one debuff with her skill. So she's a really good unit, she's a cleanse, and she's a great healer. Low cost and free, I'm putting her in S tier. If you like mythology and strategy games, then you're gonna love Dislight. Dislight is a turn-based mobile RPG with trendy, futuristic, myth-based themes. They feature characters from Greek, Chinese, Norse, and Egyptian mythology into the modern world. It also incorporates amazing music, art, and strategy to create an exciting gameplay loop. I graduated with a music degree, and I can confirm, music's pretty good. Build your own squad of espers and stand with players around the world to fight the forces of darkness. Dislight has a brand new update where they upgraded the style of the game so that you can revive your inner rebel. They also just launched two new espers, Athena and Nyx. During the new limited time event, you can use Athena to explore a labyrinth-like world and receive in-game rewards that can help you get the new characters faster. You can also get the 5-star Nyx for free. Oh, and Markiplier's here, so that's cool. With in-game options for PvP and a strategic combat loop for PvE, Dislight is a game that can be fun for every type of player. If you enjoy great music, art, legends, and strategy games, try out Dislight with my link in the description and pinned comment, and use code Dusk and Dawn to get massive rewards. Revive your inner rebel today on Dislight. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have no idea how to pronounce her name, and I don't want to butcher it beyond all belief, but she's a quantum free-to-play character. You're going to get her by just clearing some of the side content in the game, and she's actually pretty strong. Considering she's quantum coverage, that's going to be really helpful for you, especially against certain enemies, and she can hit really hard when you get lucky, but she's actually a gacha character, meaning she has a chance to deal higher damage, but it's all up to your luck, and that can be kind of fun. You could get perfect runs maybe where like you kill things faster because you get lucky, or you could just get really unlucky. I'm going to put her in B tier because I feel like she's okay. I don't feel like she's super broken, and I don't feel like she's bad either. Another free character you're going to get is going to be Herta. Now, Herta is an AoE farmer ice character. She's going to be able to deal a lot of ice AoE damage and follow-up attacks, which is really good. The problem is that Herta's stats are just pretty low, and as you can see, I've actually compiled all the stats of all the characters here. You can see Herta her base attack is going to be a significant amount lower than the other erudition characters, and that's going to hold her back in endgame, especially with her multipliers. It means that a lot of the erudition AoE characters are going to be a little bit better. Now, if you're just trying to farm some things, farm some nodes, she's great for that. She'll actually destroy them, and actually in simulated universe, you can get a lot of value with her in follow-up attacks. But generally speaking, I don't feel like she's as strong as a lot of the erudition characters, and because she's ice and a lot of characters that are good are also ice, I'm gonna have to put her down in C tier. She's fine, but I don't feel like she is super deserving of the higher spot, but she is free, and that's nice. Okay, so now that we're past the free-to-play characters, let's look at some of the other options. Right off the bat, we'll just go left to right. So Arlen is a character that's really underrated, and actually I underrated Arlen for a really long time until I did some closer inspection and I got to try him out a little bit more. Arlen is a character that scales based on how low his HP is and does more damage, and if I'm completely honest, his damage is just alright. But what makes Arlen really good is that he doesn't cost skill points to use his skill. He uses HP. Because he uses HP and not skills, this means that you can use other characters maybe in the support slot that want to constantly use their skill, and it's safe to do so. Skill point management is something that's severely underrated in this game, and when people are crafting teams and things, a lot of them aren't actually thinking about your skill point management. If you're going to consistently do hard content and make sure that your characters can do what they need to do at the appropriate time, you're going to need to manage skill points, and Arlen helps you manage those great. I'm going to put Arlen up in A tier. Now, Bailu is a great character. Bailu is going to be a 5-star healer, and unfortunately, lightning element it's all right. There's a lot of other lightning characters that you would want to run, but Bailu, just by their utility alone, is an absolutely incredible unit. They have insane healing capabilities, and they can revive a character that dies during your fight, which basically makes them kind of like C6 Chi-Chi and Genshin Impact, and they are super powerful for that, especially if you just make an oopsie. If you're not a perfect player, Bailu is going to help you a lot, and if you are a perfect player, Bailu is still going to help you a lot. So I'm going to put Bailu up in S tier. Next up would be Bronya, and this is actual Bronya, not Silver Wolf Bronya. Now, Bronya is a character that basically has the ability to move any character up ahead in the action priority to immediately after you cast her skill. And when she does that, she gives your character a buff. She also has an ultimate that is going to buff your team as well. And she's just overall such a good and powerful support utility. And the amount of flexibility she brings to your teams by you being able to move up characters is really good. She also has a passive that allows you to guarantee crits with her, which means that building her is actually really straightforward, and she can deal some pretty solid damage even as a support. It's not amazing, but it can be helpful. Considering all of the flexibility that Bronya gives you, and considering all of the nutty things you can do by moving characters up, she really solves a lot of players' skill issue, and she also helps you kill things a lot faster. So I'm actually gonna put Bronya in a tier of her own because I truly believe she might be the best character in the game right now. Bronya is going to go in Bronya tier because there's no other character like her. Next up is Clara, and a lot of people actually slept on this character. I slept on this character for a long time, but there's a good reason for it. She almost doesn't really function unless you have a taunt that you can add on top of her normal taunts. Her ultimate will give you that slightly higher chance of being attacked, but it's not going to be good enough to make her good all the time. You kind of need March 7th. But if you use her with March 7th, she has the highest AoE potential in the game by like a pretty significant amount. In a perfect scenario, we're talking about like 25% better than the next best character. That's also 25% better than the next character. So Clara's an absolutely insane unit under the right circumstances. Under the wrong circumstances, she's still pretty all right. I'm going to put her in S tier just because I believe that once we figure out this game and all of the other characters, she's going to be insanely broken. Just another reminder, I want to let you guys know that this is an early tier list. This is before the game actually releases. A lot of these characters could be changed. I just feel like it's important to reiterate that. Next up is Gepard. Now, Gepard is an AoE shielder. Think of him like March 7th, except he shields your entire team. He doesn't have the utility that March has to guarantee freeze all the time. His AoE shield is not as strong as a lot of the single target shields, but because it's AoE, it's so safe and productive that actually with Gepard and with the right setup and rotation, you could likely keep up that AoE shield for a majority of all of the fights, and you could probably run teams without healers with Gepard. Gepard is really good at that. He's also Ice, which again conflicts with March. You're not going to use March and Gepard, but Gepard is an option that's really good if you're against enemies that deal a lot of AoE damage that's slightly lower than an enemy that would deal single target damage. I actually believe that Gepard is another S tier character, and I'm going to put him up there. Next up is Himiko, and I have some bad news. Himiko is a fan favorite for a lot of Honkai players, and she actually was insanely broken in one of the betas we had a long time ago. She has the highest base attack in the game, I believe. You can look at this. Himiko 756. Yeah, there's not a character that matches that base attack at level 80, which is absolutely insane, right? She has the highest base attack, but her multipliers are her passive is really good for shredding shields and for dealing damage in AoE and farming, but in most content, she's not actually going to be that helpful for you unless the content is all AoE and you have lots of shields to shred. Basically, what I'm saying is that Himiko can be okay, but she's actually not as good as some of the other erudition, even some of the 4-star options. So I'm gonna go ahead and put Himiko in B tier. She's all right, she does her job, but I don't feel like Himiko is as good as a lot of the other 5-stars in this game. Hook is going to be an all right destruction unit, fire unit. She does damage. That's about it. Like, that's her main thing. Is she just deals fire damage and she's good at it. The fire damage is going to be decent, but it's not going to be an insane amount that's going to be like game changing, unlike some other DPS that we'll see here soon. So I'm going to put Hook in B tier. She's not bad. She's not super great. Next up is going to be, I believe his name's pronounced Jingyuan. This guy is absolutely busted, like insanely powerful. The highest AoE damage in the game, unless you count Clara in a perfect scenario, right? Outside of the perfect scenario, Clara falls way behind this dude. This guy has so much AoE damage due to just his attacks being so strong, but also him having this extra summon that inherits crit and can attack like a normal character on your team and deal AoE damage. It can be an absolutely bonkers amount of AoE damage. His stats are good, his multipliers are good, absolutely insane unit, and he's going up in S tier as well. I also should note now that these aren't in any particular order. These are just placements for the characters. It's really hard to order them, so I'm just avoiding ordering them in the tiers. Next up is going to be Pela. Now, Pela, at the moment, she has a completely unique utility. She lowers enemy defense, which is actually really, really good. But the problem is that to insert Pela into a team, one, she's going to take a skill point, and two, you kind of have to be wary that there's so many other good ice characters in the game, and there's a lot of characters that can deal more damage than is worth decreasing a couple enemies' defense. Now, this might change in the future if we get enemies that have just absurd defense multipliers and you need to bring that defense shred. But at the moment, Pela doesn't really have a niche to fill. That said, she will fill it when it comes up and when it becomes a problem. I'm going to put her in A tier because conceptually she's a good character. We just haven't seen a need for her yet. Next up is going to be Sampo. He's a pretty solid wind damage dealer in AoE. In single target, it's kind of not super great, and he focuses on damage over time. To be honest, his AoE damage, as I mentioned before, is really solid, and he's a wind damage dealer. If you look at Donhung, he's basically only single target, and if you look at Sampo, he actually has AoE. So in content where you need multiple like AoE wind damage dealers, or you just need AoE wind damage, he can be great for that. You can argue that bounce isn't technically AoE, and that's kind of true. It's like single target that moves around, you can't guarantee it. But that's how I like to think of Sampo, and I'd say based on his AoE damage or his damage in AoE scenarios, I'd probably put him up in A tier. And next up is going to be Seele, my beloved. I love Seele so much. She's an amazing character. There were some sims done to check out damage for like a lot of the characters, and in the sim she didn't actually get to use her passive at all that resets her attacks. What I mean by that is if you kill an enemy, if you knock an enemy out, she gets a reset on an attack, and the reset attacks can't trigger more resets, but her ultimate can trigger them, and her initial attacks can trigger them. She also has a lot of self buffs. She's a very fast character, and she can actually clear out AoE content with single target attacks just due to how fast she is and how many extra attacks she can get for free just by cycling. So she's a really, really powerful character. Definitely the highest single target damage dealer in the game. So I'm going to put her up in S tier as well. I think Seele is an absolutely amazing unit. If you're looking for the best single target or the best AoE at release, that's going to be these two, Jingyuan and Seele. Next up, we have Serval, and Serval is an amazing lightning character that's going to deal a ton of lightning AoE damage if you build her right. It is absolutely worth investing into Serval. She's also another free character that I forgot she was free at the beginning of the video. So now that you know, because of pre-registration, we get her for free, which is also really cool. She's an amazing damage dealer. Like, I cannot stress this enough. She does a lot of damage over time, and she just hits really hard. She shreds shields. She's a great unit overall. That said, she is second to Jingyuan in the lightning category. Like, she's not going to beat his damage, and he's going to deal so much more damage that it's hard for me to put her on the same tier as him. So I'm going to go ahead and put her in A tier, but she is really good. All right, next up is going to be Susong, and she's also one of the best girls in the entire game. Absolutely amazing single target physical damage. That is the name of her game. She has this ability that advances her actions forward, and between speed and everything that she's gaining out of her kit, she also gives herself some speed buffs if there's enemies with weakness break on the field. She's overall a very powerful damage dealer. I would actually even put her up in S tier. Now, I'm not going to say she's on the same level as Seela because she's not, but as far as a 4-star goes, for her value, I actually think Susong is one of the best characters in the game and definitely a character worth investing in if you get her. Now, next up is going to be Qingyun, who is absolutely amazing and insane. So basically, if you guys play FGO, Qingyun is Merlin. She gives you a bunch of buffs. She gives you attack buff, she gives you damage bonus, and she can help fill your energy bar, which is an absolutely like crazy utility to have, especially in a game where like certain characters' buffs can be reliant on their energy bar and them getting their ultimate consistently. So Qingyun, just because she buffs your damage by so much, this is the Bennett of this game. She's not going to be healing you, but she is absolutely insane. And I would actually put Qingyun up in Bronya tier as literally the best 4-star support in the entire game and potentially the best 4-star in the game just because of the utility she provides. Insanely broken unit, and she's probably going to be a must-have at some point. Thank goodness she's a 4-star. Also, her design is peak. She looks so good. Welt is a fan favorite. He's one of my favorites too. He's going to be one of the only imaginary characters available at launch. And he basically has the ability to do AoE imaginary damage if you count his bounce as AoE. He also has his ult that allows you to do imaginary. Now, his technique from outside of battle also slows enemies, which can be really good. And I feel like that's worth mentioning. There's a lot of techniques in the game that give you little buffs. There's lots of techniques that debuff enemies, but Welt's is one of the better ones. Instant imprisonment is insanely good. And that is probably one of the biggest things he provides. I think he's a great unit, and I'm going to put him up in A tier, but not quite S material in my opinion. Although he's really funny in game. Next up is Yanqing, and this, I definitely butchered his name too. And he's amazing. He's a hunt character that's going to deal tons of single target damage. Absolutely amazing single target damage. And for a 5-star, he's really, really good. If you don't count Seela's extra attacks in Sim, he actually does almost as much damage as Seela. Now, it's hard for me to decide to put him in A or S tier. I think personally, I would put him in S tier just because of his insane single target damage. But when you do compare him with Susong, who can get such insane single target damage as a 4-star, and someone like Seela, who can outclass him by a lot when you count her extra attacks, I'm more tempted to put him in A tier. Also, he's ice, which means that using him with March or Japard is going to be probably not as advisable for type coverage unless you're against something that is just weak to ice. So for that reason, I think I would put him in A tier. I might put him in low S tier, but I'll put him in A tier for now. And my opinion of him may change at launch, but that's my opinion right now. And finally, I'm going to tell you guys about the Trailblazer as a unit. So in Genshin Impact, if you ever played that game, the Traveler is kind of like a discount version of a lot of the other characters available for that element. And in this game, I wouldn't call them strictly a discount, actually. I would say they're a lot better. So the Trailblazer here, the physical Trailblazer has AoE damage with their skill and with their ultimate, and their ultimate and skill can actually dish out a lot of damage. In AoE, Trailblazer is actually really strong. Physical Trailblazer is great. However, in single target, physical Trailblazer is a lot worse, and I would put physical Trailblazer probably in B tier. A decent unit overall, but not as significant as a lot of the other AoE DPS in the game. But with that being said, if we're looking at Fire Trailblazer, I actually put Fire Trailblazer either in A or S tier. I think that having fire break abilities is really good. The only other fire characters you have that you're looking at are someone like Hook, who's a damage dealer. So if you already have damage taken up, you don't play Hook. Himiko, who's Erudition, but not as good as some of the other Eruditions in my opinion. And Asta, who is going to be another potential Pyro AoE, Pyro Shield Break, and Buffer. But if you're using Asta, and you're not against something that just needs insane fire break, then you would have trouble fitting this character in as well. Like I said, type coverage in this game can be really huge. So for that reason, it's hard for me to say again between A and S tier. I would probably put Trailblazer in A tier along with March, who also has a really good shield utility. But you could argue that Trailblazer goes up to S tier in fire form because of their damage actually being pretty decent, defense scaling, and because they have a taunt, and their taunt is really dang strong. It gets enemies to attack them specifically. So if someone's like threatening another character that has low HP, Trailblazer can take that. Also, Trailblazer has a small shield it can give to your team. So actually, on second thought, I'd probably put Trailblazer up in S tier for fire. And for physical, I'd probably put him in B tier. Well, there you go. That's my tier list for Honkai Star Rail. Let me know what you think, or don't. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of controversial opinions here. A lot of people are not going to like what I have to say. But if you agree with what I have to say, or if you're just excited about the game, let me know down in the comments. I love to hear when you guys are excited about the same things I'm excited about. Let me know who your favorite character is, etc., etc. And hopefully this also gives you an idea of who's good at the start of the game. Lastly, I will be making an updated tier list once we actually have had the game for a little while, just so that way we can be 100% sure. There also might be like balance changes at the start of the game too. I don't think there will be a ton, but it's possible. I especially think Qingyun might get nerfed because she's like way too strong. But outside of that, guys, I hope you've enjoyed. I hope this helps you make some informed decisions. And thanks for watching. Subscribe for more Star Rail. Subscribe for Genshin Impact. Subscribe because you want to be here. And I'll catch you guys next time.